Okay, so let's begin. I'm Dawn Reby, CEO of Excellence in Analytics, and today's session is all about resting and renewing part 2. So today we're having this conversation about impermanence and what it actually is and how we can really move through rest and restoration to get us to places of our highest and best selves. So what is impermanence, right? What is impermanence? And for those of you who missed our last week's session, it was rest and, oh Lordy. It was restore and renew part 1, and it was all about creating margin, silence, and white space, right? To really think with clarity, to deliver with clarity. And today is all about impermanence, and we're going to talk about what that means and how we can really create our best selves by recognizing if we are falling into the impermanence trap. So, what is impermanence? Impermanence is the state or fact of lasting only for a limited time, right? So things don't last forever. Yet we are obsessed with things lasting forever. We are obsessed with perfectionism. We are obsessed with this concept of things sticking with us for a long time. And I want to read this quote for you by Somerset Maugham. Nothing in the world is permanent. We are foolish when we ask anything to last. But surely we are more foolish not to take delight when it does last. So we are foolish to think that things are going to last. Thinking about your careers that you might be in, your homes that you might be in, relationships that you might be in. We're going to dive into all of that and how impermanence and this concept of impermanence is really holding a lot of people back from up-leveling themselves into their best selves. So, why are we obsessed with permanence? Why are we obsessed with permanence, right? So thinking about the security that it brings us to maybe be in a relationship or be in a home that we don't want to leave. Maybe we know it's time to go, and we really don't want to go, whether we're young adults or maybe we're old adults and we're in the same place for a long period of time. Maybe the same place in your own development, in your own career. Like, how many of you stay in careers even though you know that it's not exactly giving you what it needs to be giving you anymore, but you stay there because it feels secure, right? Or maybe it's a relationship. Maybe you stay in a relationship because you don't want change. You don't want there to be change. Change to you feels harder than actually being in that relationship or being in that home. And so when we experience things like trauma, right? Maybe there's a car accident or a death in our family or something happens to us. It is in those moments that we finally recognize and align with what is important to us, right? And so knowing that things are, and it shouldn't have to be that, it shouldn't have to come to that. It shouldn't have to come to death or something big happening for us to accept impermanence in our lives. And so knowing impermanence, knowing that things change and evolve, and embracing that things change and evolve can actually give us better alignment with what is important in our lives. So plug into the chat right now if you find that maybe you are trying to stay permanent in some things. Maybe you are staying in a career, in a home, in a relationship, in your own self, in your own thinking, in your own ways, because you don't want change. You're fearing that change. And so maybe in a status, right? A status, you want the title of married and not unmarried, right? Or you want the title of employed. And so you want to, have this status, have this permanency, have this, thing. How many of you long for something permanent in your life, right? And so, what do you put off? What matters? Megan says, yes, definitely have been working through this as of late. Yeah, exactly. Do you put your name on a building to somehow leave your legacy on that building, right? Becky says in the past with some relationships, staying longer, really fearing that change. Do you play small? Do you create these little itsy bitsy goals, these little itsy bitsy things of achievement milestones because, you don't want that big change, right? Like you just want a little bit, right? And for whatever reason that might be. Do you put off what matters to you? I mean, think about your day to day. Did you put off your health? Did you put off that extra kiss to your children or to your husband or to your wife or to your loved ones? Did you put off that phone call to somebody important because you got busy with the things that create permanence for you, right? What did you put off that matters to you today? What did you put off, right? And so what hug did you not deliver? What phone call did you not make because you were too busy with the things that make life permanent? Or things that are permanent in your life for you, that you're focusing on those things all the time versus what's shifting and changing. What about, your kids? Does anyone here try to make their kids stay teeny weeny because you don't want them to grow and evolve and change? You're like, oh my gosh, you're growing up too fast. Just stay small. Or maybe you're saying that to yourself, right? Like maybe you want yourself to stay small because you recognize and are familiar with what it feels like to be small, right? Maybe you're wallowing in guilt, right? Because it's easier for you to feel guilt than it is for you to feel the change that comes with moving out of that guilt. Maybe it's guilt for whatever reason, right? That you're kind of wallowing in that space of like, am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? Did I do what I was supposed to do? Maybe you are staying in permanence because you think you're going to feel guilty if you spread out a little bit, if you tap into something that might not be smart or whatever it might be. So it's interesting because I was doing a little research for this on impermanence. This is something that has been really happening in thinking about in my life. And I saw these pop-up structures happening in Europe, right? So people are not wanting to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on homes because, they want to transition. They want impermanence. They want to evolve. They want to live over here in Europe for a couple of years, then over here, then over here. So they're building these pop-up structures that give them the flexibility and the freedom to do some of the things that they desire without the permanency that's required with a traditional home purchase or a traditional marriage or traditional whatever, right? So it was interesting. And so everything changes. Everything changes, including us, including our views evolve. The things that were once important to us when we were 18 years old become less important to us as the years go on. But do we pay attention to those? Are we in alignment with the things that are most important to us right now? If family is most important to you, right? Are you, doing the things you need to do to really, create and love on and pour love and light into your family? Or maybe friendships are really important to you, but you're too busy or too tired to go out, right? And you're too busy and too tired because you're focusing on the permanence, the things that create that stability for you, right? And so impermanence is the only thing that's guaranteed in life. We're gonna grow old. We are. I've grown. I've grown a year older since last year, okay? We're going to lose loved ones. We're going to, hopefully not very often, get fired or get divorced or have some kind of financial loss that's unexpected. Maybe your heat breaks in the middle of the night and that is really stressful, right? Things change, things evolve, and it's often that we find ourselves in great crisis when there's this change and there's this shift. We feel uneasy, or we don't even want to go into the shift or changes because we don't want to feel uneasy, right? So I think about, my daughter shared some stories with me and to share with you all. And one of the things I think about is when I was growing up as an Italian, living in an Italian household, we had an orange room, right? It had an orange rug and blue like drapes, and there was no plastic on the furniture, but the furniture we weren't allowed to sit on unless it was the holidays, right? So there was this concept that this room should not change, This room should not be enjoyed. This room is only for the holidays. Does anyone else have a story like that where you had a fancy room that you weren't really allowed in, right? Because for some reason that room needed to stay the same. And I think about that. I think about these stories in our lives where we're in these crisis mode because we see change and shift. And there's a couple of things that I want to share with you that are very important in life. Life is evolving. Life is shifting. Life is fluid and has movement to it. And when we grip and hold on to permanence, right? When we grip and hold on to permanence, then we make decisions and value things that are not in true alignment with what is deeply important to us. Think about it. Has that happened to you recently? Hey, Renee, has that happened to you recently where you grip and you hold on to things that are not truly in alignment with showing up as your best self or your core values because you want this permanency in your life? The reality is life is evolving, life is ever changing, and we must embrace impermanence, right? There's this Bronnie Ware wrote a book, Death and Dying, or something like that. Death and Dying, I think, is what the name of it was. And she interviewed, and I've mentioned it a few times before, she was a nurse who worked with folks who were passing away, and she asked them, what was their regret? And many of them regretted working so much or putting all of their time into working and not focusing on what was true and of a part of their core value system. And we do that because we want this permanence in our lives. It feels safe to have things solid, right? It feels safe for us to have things in our life. But here's the thing. Life is continuously evolving. Like I mentioned, people pass through our lives sometimes. We don't want to ever think about that. We don't want to think about, we could, not have our children in our lives or our partners in our lives or our homes in our lives or our jobs in our lives or friends or family. We don't want to think about them transitioning around. But think back to your high school days, right? You're probably not close friends with anyone from high school. You hopefully have evolved. And if they evolved with you, then maybe you are connected. But the reality is you have evolved, and you should. Life is impermanent, right? And so how do we deal with this obsession? How do we deal with this obsession of having permanency in life? And I can share with you, I remember purchasing my homes and thinking to myself, well, I'll spend a few years here, I'll spend a few years there, and never saying to myself, this is my end home, this is the final home, this is where I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Because the reality is, do I really want that 6 months, 6 years from now? Do I want to spend all my time in the same place, right? And so maybe I want a home hub and I'm, traveling or seeing different communities or, evolving in my own very way throughout my life. And so a lot of times I remember being in a situation, I actually, was in a relationship and I was like, I want to leave this relationship, but there were so many things that I wanted to feel secure about. And I remember going to a therapist and saying, how do I shift my mindset to get out of this dependency here, to get out of this need to be here or feeling like I needed to be here? And how do I embrace permanence, right? How do I embrace the shift and the change that I'm going through? And so how do we deal with impermanence? And I'm going to show you how. So if you find that you're stuck to certain habits or certain things, like do you look around your house and have so many things that you're confused? Right? Do you struggle with letting go of the things that don't matter in the long run? Right? Do you struggle with that? And so, number one, accept it as, accept impermanence as normal. It's not easy to say that people or things or anything is going to be in and out of your life, right? That it might transform and transition into something that, might not be here in a while. It doesn't feel good to say that, but this is actually a Buddhist principle that, impermanence is true, and accept it. Accept evolution. Accept that things change and evolve and that you change and evolve. Share what you have and let go. For a lot of you, that's money, right? You think you have to hoard onto money. That was it for me. Like I wanted, like, oh, once I have this much money in my bank account, that makes me safe and secure, right? Well, the fact of the matter is we don't own our money. Money is our tool that provides us with these experiences and these joys that we really can experience in life, right? And so I struggle sometimes when people hold on to everything and they work so hard and they're like, oh, I want to have something for my kids when I leave. And in the meantime, they're not living life. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Your kids would rather you live your life and be joyous and fulfilled then know that you suffered all that time and have a few dollars that probably doesn't even equal what it had equaled when you saved it. For instance, my grandfather bought a house for $17,000, right? This is over 60 years ago. And so if he would have, now the house is like $400,000, right? But if he would have saved that $17,000 saying to himself, well, I want to save this for my grandkids or for my kids, like the reality is it wouldn't have been as much value to us 50, 60 years later. So I ask, because it evolves, right? Because we evolve. And so sharing and letting go, creating a life of sharing and flow is one way to really embrace impermanence and recognize that what's important to you can be right in front of you. And that needs to be looked at and loved on and poured sunshine into, okay? It's not okay to wait. It's not okay to say, well, when I retire, I'll enjoy life. Or when I'm done putting in my time, I'll spend more time with my family, right? That's that. And then this is the ironic piece, right? It's like an Alanis Morissette song where isn't it ironic, right? That the day after you get on the airplane, you save all your money and you go, the plane crashes, or when all you need is a fork and then there's all knives or whatever. Like you get the idea is that, when you're fixated on this permanent idea that doesn't change, the world is still evolving around you. And so you could retire and not find joy the next day like you thought, right? And so sharing, embracing, developing your core values and embracing them before it's too late, right? Number 3, find opportunities for impermanence. Find opportunities to be part of the shift, to be part of the growth, to be part of the evolution. Find opportunities to share your gifts and be part of the changes that go about, the flow that goes about. So find opportunities for impermanence. So for instance, if you work at an agency, find where growth needs to happen and be there. Right? If you have a bunch of kids or one, right? Find where they are and discover them. Be curious about your kids, where they are in that very moment. If you're in a relationship right now and it's getting kind of blah, find the opportunity to explore that person today, right? If you are getting blah about your own life, find the opportunity to take yourself out to dinner, to enjoy you, to share you, to embrace you, right? And so find opportunities for when the shifts. Yes, I love that song too, Michelle. Find opportunities to be part of change, to be part of a global shift, to be part of, for us, it's shifting the mindset of law enforcement, fire, EMS, from, this work mentality to an incredible balance of work and joy of love in life, right? So we're part of this movement and we get to see it progress and it's beautiful, right? And so find opportunities to shift and to grow and to be part of it. Find that impermanence. So number 4, of course, gratitude. Be thankful for every single day. Tomorrow might not be here. And for those of you who don't believe me, the folks who have faced challenges in their lives, the folks who have faced COVID, illness, or even death, or other kinds of death, folks who have experienced losing their homes, it is in those crisis modes that we often feel more connected and more aligned with what's important to us. But I ask you to stop there and find what's important to you right now and go to that, serve that, be part of that. And if you struggle with finding that alignment, reach out. We have systems and process and coaches in place to help support you as you align with what's important in your own life. Okay? So we have accept impermanence as normal. Share and let go. Find opportunities for impermanence. Be thankful every single day. And number 5, treat life as finite. Okay? Life is not infinite, right? It does not keep on going, right? So back in the day, the age of death was somewhere around 40. Now it's closer to what, 75? I mean, my grandfather was 96. Like, so at some point we perish. At some point we go away. And so treat life as if it's going away today. Treat life as if it's the most important, special thing for you right now. You don't have to show up as negative. Show up as if it was your last day. Show up as if you were leaving this huge impression on every single person that you encountered. So show up as this joyous person, or show up as your best possible self every single flipping day. Life is not infinite, and recognize that. Or recognize that tomorrow your best friend could be gone. Your children could be gone. Your life could be displaced. You could be completely different. Just because you've had some permanence in your life right now doesn't mean that that permanence will last forever. You could get fired. I was actually just talking with someone on Facebook today that their job got pulled out of the blue. They're like, sorry, we're no longer having this role anymore. And this beautiful human has to reinvent herself. Like, her life is like, what the flip? What's happening? And so when we live in this notion that life is evolving, life is changing, and we will find what we're looking for if we open ourselves up to it, then it doesn't become such crisis when certain things happen. Now, I'm not saying sadness isn't part of the delivery, right? Things shift and things change. Sometimes it's quite heart-wrenching. But don't wait for the heart wrench in order to align with your values and align with the things that bring you joy and love, right? And number 6, live in a state of joy. Live in a state of joy. And if you are not in a state of joy right now, I mean, what's your life? What is your life? What do you want it to be, right? What do you want it to be? And so there's this kind of like, I'm listening to this, I joined this group of empowered women, and they talk about, with Sahara Rose, and they talk about this elevator, this building, right? And I actually just got off a podcast a couple days ago. I can't wait to share it with you, where we talked about this too. But, if you think of a building, right? At the bottom, when you're at the bottom, you're kind of living in victimhood. Like, that happened to me. Life is not good for me. Things of the world are unfair, right? Like, you're kind of living in that victim space, right? And then maybe you look around and you're like, I don't want to live in victimhood anymore. So you go up one little level and you live in guilt, and you're like, ooh, I shouldn't have done that. I was a bad parent. I was a bad this. And you're like, oh, am I good enough? Like, this whole little guilt thing, right? And then you look around and all you have is guilt around you. And you're like, what am I doing here? This is not how I want to live my life. And so you step up, and all of a sudden you get pissed off at yourself and you're angry. Why was I living that way? What? And things start to aggravate you, and things start to like really fester up inside of you. And so you say to yourself, at some point you look around and you're attracting anger, right? Because you're living anger, so you're attracting anger. So at some point you look around and you're like, what has happened here? What has happened here? I don't, I don't want to live in this anger. So now you become neutral. Ooh, what a dangerous place to be neutral. You're like, I don't care, whatever. You're living this life of disconnect, right? Of disconnect. So you're kind of in this neutral phase, and you're like, it's easier to be neutral. It's easier not to care, right? But then you start looking around, and the value is missing for you. The caring of other people is missing for you. And so you decide to go up another level to acceptance. All right, I accept my life as it is. I accept what's in front of me. I accept this work for what it is. And it's better than being angry and guilty all the time, but it's still kind of like this, like, not completely there yet. And then we up level. We say, I'm going to take the elevator up another level, and you get to this path of happiness, right? And all of a sudden you're happy, and you're like, this is great. I'm actually really happy. But happiness is a feeling that comes and goes. So you could be happy and then sad, happy and then sad, based on the scenarios that are happening in your life. And so you say to yourself, well, I like the idea of being happy, but I don't want it to be based on these ebbs and flows that are going on in my life. And so you finally decide to up level, to rise up as your best self, and to live in a state of joy. Joy is a state. It's not a feeling. It's not a, it's not a thing that changes. When you live in a state of joy, whatever comes into your life, you can have feelings of happiness and sadness. You can have all of that, but ultimately you live in this mastery of joy where life is ultimately exactly what you want it to be. The transitions that happen in your life are feeling good for you to some degree. Some of them you may not like, you may be angry at, right? As feelings change, but the state of joy is acceptance of this impermanence of, did I live my best life with this human when he or she was here? Was I the best parent I could be? Did I give everything to myself? Did I live a life of joy when I was here to live it, right? And so how do we get to this space of joy? How do we get out of guilt? How do we get out of sadness? How do we get out of the flip-flop? How do we get out of relying on what happens in our outside environment to shift what we're thinking? And, the way to do that is to really accept impermanence as a way of life. Things evolve, and be excited about the evolvement. Now, I'm not saying be excited about a car accident or be excited about, devastation in your life. I'm not saying be excited about those things. I'm saying accept them as evolving, and know that you committed, every day you showed up, you poured love into it. Every day you showed up as your best self. So when you walk away from that job, or when you walk away from that relationship, or when you walk away from that house, or when you send your kids off to live their own lives, you truly know inside that everything that you touched increased as a result of the way you presented in life. Everything that you touched increased as a way of how you presented in life. And so, some ways to really think about how to get here is through some talking to yourself. Like, how do you get from guilt and anger to a level of joy, right? A level of complete joy. Accepting impermanence, embracing impermanence. One thing you can do to really develop this is to affirm it, to find the gratitude, to embrace the change, and to affirm things. So, things, I have some affirmations here. I'll read you one of them. I am just so worthy, deserving, and capable of achieving my ideal outcome as any other person on earth. And I will prove it today with my actions, right? So I will prove it today with my actions. So I'm a huge action-taking, believing person, right? I believe that you can't just want things. You can't want to embrace impermanence and not do anything about it. You can't want to pour love into people and do nothing about it. You can't want to feel less ball and chain to an environment and then do nothing about it. You got to put action to it. So actions can start with your mindset and start with affirmations. Actions can start with your mindset and really focus on finding things that are shifting, like the global shifts that we talked about a little bit earlier, and embracing them, being part of them. Looking at your body as it matures and ages and being proud of it, being happy with it. Being excited that you are beautiful exactly at the space where you are right now. Acknowledging it, accepting it. And, if you're at a space where you should all, like people say, oh, so you've reached the top. And I'm like, no, I've reached my top today. I've reached my top, what I'm capable of today. And when tomorrow shows up, if tomorrow shows up, I'm going to rise to my top of tomorrow. And each day I'm learning a little bit more that gets me higher and higher, right? Each day I'm learning and growing and evolving and shifting a little bit more and more that gets me to operate at a higher mentality every single day. So it's okay for me to have these tough days and these challenges, as long as I'm living in this space of joy, where there's going to be some things that happen in my life that I don't love, that I don't agree with, but I'm embracing joy. And when I embrace joy as a lifestyle, just like on all those other floors, when you embrace sadness as a lifestyle, sad things come to you. When you embrace guilt, guilty things come to you. When you embrace joy, joyous things and experiences and people come to you. So the reality here is our lives are going to end someday, right? It might be today, it might be tomorrow, it might be 30 years from now. And so recognizing and aligning with what's important before this crisis or trauma in our lives, recognizing and aligning with what's important to our core, and pursuing that every single day, pouring love into others every single day is key to success, is key to this concept of restoration, right? Is key to this concept of restore and renew. When we restore, when we renew, we recognize that things are not always perfect, but it's okay because we have joy. We love ourselves. We are showing up as our best selves. Okay. So with all of that, I'd love for you to take action. Take action today. Take action today in showing up as your best self, right? Showing up as your best self and pouring love, energy, joy into so many others. It'll be a better life for them, and it'll be a heck of a better life for you. So I wish you today to go ahead and tackle it, to enjoy it, to love on it. And I'll leave you with these words that my daughter told me to say, my 11-year-old told me to say: enjoy your joy. Bye, guys.